Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11. Playing as Germany along with Third Reich event, German gameplay augmentation, units of the Third Reich, the D-Worms mods, Tanganyika, foreign aid and air bases, hello, and California Picture Province as well. I like to show off this little mod here. You can see, go up to Santa Barbara. There we go. We got a Santa Barbara picture, a Mojave picture. That's just a generic one. Pasadena Parade, Riverside, Oceanside. San Diego's already in the game. El Centro. Those are just generic ones. We can go out here, Hoover Dam, Las Vegas. I don't know exactly all. There we go. Carmel, King City with Hearst Castle. Yeah, so minor little mod. So I live in California, grew up, raised there. That kind of thing. So we're doing that. Okay. So that's what this is. I'm making this mod, making this episode. Just after the release of the first episode, no one could have watched the full episode. The very first one was over 2 hours. Didn't intend it to be that long. Did want to talk about a few things, but definitely wanted to cover all of the starting decisions that you need to make. Okay, the only thing I've done is basically given the air units. And they're all, two-way. Larger formation there. So now we can look at, we got extra production here now that we did that. These ships are nice. We can wait on them, in my opinion. We don't need them now. We're not going to be going to war for some time. Obviously we can get all of these produced by December 1937. Well, for defeating France, Poland, we don't need those ships. So, not that it's bad to keep them in production, but it is not the best or most efficient thing. What we want to do is focus on getting our industry going. Now, they have, mainly Oh My God, has made it so that if you spam out ICs, you will be hit with some serious penalties until I think 1941 or something. Then you can spam to your heart's content. Now, in 1936, if I remember correctly, you won't get any negative effects until you go over 400 ICs. So you want to keep it under that. And that is, it's to my understanding, adjusted ICs. Because you can see the wasted, which is 33 currently. And then 149 is your base. And then 256 is all the various adjustments that you can see there, including positive and negatives. So now we will be taking a hit to our ICs coming very shortly. Okay, well, I think that's at least one in all of the places where we have a heavy IC presence. But I do want to call it spam. Want to increase the ICs, and shall we say a little more so in the east than in the west. A little further from the bombing centers. Sort of going along this riverbank here. Is this the Oder? Okay, so that probably more than we need to do. We're going to move these guys down here. Now, like I say, coming on the 10th, we're going to take a massive, well, biggish hit to our ICs. We've already checked out. I don't want to go to 3-year draft yet, but we do need to go to, and yeah, I missed a few days, but big deal. And of course, I'm particularly, so we want to do, at least I believe in doing structural background, if you will, research first, because getting things like education will improve every other leadership thing. Might as well do that earlier. Radios, maybe. Now, also here, we're not going to completely go say goodbye to officers, I don't think. Now, we're having a massive hit because for the first part of this year, because we kept all the battle commanders, but we're not planning on going to war. Diplomacy, we don't need this many at this point. Let's go down to just about 3. I don't know who we're going to try to be influencing at this point. I will be doing some tech espionage, stealing. But let's see if we can run this down to also about 4 or 5. Okay, okay, so this gets us a lot of stuff here, and since we did mention that, let's start with phones by priority, counter-espionage, ruling party support, and raise national unity. Because you can see here, our current, unless our officers are hit, current national unity is down at 90%. And when we come back here, we're at 37% National Socialists. Don't know why the fascists are so big at 36. They were big, but I don't know if 36% this time. Not quite sure what's defining that. And the rest of these look fairly correct. Socialist, I might have put a bit more. SDP, I don't know. Not necessarily that they had any seats in Parliament or anything, but just popularity. So we want to increase our popularity as much as possible. We want everyone to like the National Socialists. Now let's come down here. We want to do the 1936 text first. These are all 38, so that's good. Okay, construction, yes. Industry, new industrial zones. Now we can do a seaport. Capabilities. Yeah, let's do radios. Now, well, let's do Garrison Deployment. This is basically, they wanted to keep like tropical island garrisons and other garrisons on the land where they were put, instead of having the AI move them. So they made them super heavy so they can't be moved, and the AI can't research this, but humans can. So you want to do that, and it's supposed to go as pretty fast. Okay, well, let's get some tanks under development so that we can do that. 37 high density, yes, let's do this. I think these are where I really want to make sure that I'm getting everything done now, early, fast, structurally. And we are. Okay, so let's look at controllable pitch air propeller, sure. Let's do twin engine armament so that we can build some twin engine fighters if we... Oh no, that's 37, so let's wait on that. Yeah, let's get basic 500 kilogram bomb, however much that weighs. Yeah, let's look at some submarines. Okay, these are all pretty good. Some of these I think are maybe upgradable, but let's start here. Might as well. Now, obviously, we have some stuff already in production, which unless it's upgradable, this won't affect that. Well. Let's research cruiser engines and armament. Because if we're going to build any of these, and we're going to maybe build some, we might as well get the stuff researched now before we start them into production. We are fairly well ahead on a lot of these things. So let's come here. Okay, see, we're already at 39 there. Body armor we're not going to do. Do this. Gonna be occupying lands, most assuredly. Might as well get artillery brigades up and going. Infantry units. Now we may also be with going on taking a bit of a hit here, but all right. Okay, we'll do that. We've got enough at the moment, I guess. I'd rather come over here. Let's do... artillery barrages. There we go. And grand battle plan. Well, can do twin engine bomb bays, and yeah, we might as well do this. No, okay, that currently evens us out. Now, we have a positive element here. Let's see about importing some rare materials. Now, where do we want to... rare materials. Where do we want to do that from? We want to do it not from a source like Belgium if we can help it, because I hope they just produce an excess, and then when we invade, we will conquer it and add it to our stockpiles. So since we can do things like that, we can buy it from our likely future allies, which, yes, it does drain their stockpile potentially, but it also gives them money to buy other things. So, or do we want to like come, I don't know, Portugal here? Okay, that's too much, but we can do 4. Yeah, we could try to already get... Did I do that? Yeah. Hope I did the right ones there with that. Well, let's see if we can do about 15. That'll eat into our money, but help improve our relations with Japan. Okay. Now let's get the clock rolling a little bit on this. Yeah. So currently stockpiles, supplies, but we should be now producing massive overproduction on supplies. We occupy the Rhineland, yes. And the historical buildup of the Luftwaffe, we want to do that. Warning, not taking events disrupts the event change, not taking, you will not get, okay, so, if we want to do this, they will remove a few things, but, give us a lot by events, and we're going to do that. Now, we will be paying for it by a hit on our overall, ICs, I do believe. Okay. Henschel und Son. George Carl Christian. Okay, so we can get a tank factory in Kessel or not. We're going to do that. Again, why we should be building up massive over, and you should be doing massive over production of supplies at this point. You really, really should. We're going to let this hang for, okay, 200 or 2,500. Okay, Britain, yes, we will sell you supplies. Brazil, we will sell you supplies. Soviets, we will sell you supplies. Some of these will cancel. We will sell you, and we will sell you. Okay. This is from Third Reich events. Now, I got a book I want to actually listen to. I got an audiobook of it, but on the essay, and it claims and it covered the essay post 1934, because prior to that, it was under Ernst Röhm, and then you have the Rome Purge, and most people forget about the SA in the story of Nazi Germany. Well, they continue it to actually be a very vital part of National Socialism. They really do, much more so than people talk about. They start talking about the SS because very quickly, the very early concentration camps were run by the SA. I'm talking in the very first months of 1933, well, you know, when they come to power. And it's basically run very badly, as in bad administrative elements. I'm not talking about brutality. They're always very brutal, you know. That's not what I'm talking about. So there's not like good camps and bad camps. There's just bad camps and worse camps. Please don't misunderstand my meaning, but they're sort of mismanaged, mishandled, maybe just brutality for brutality's sake, as opposed to brutality to achieve a particular end. Again, there's bad and worse. And then worse than that, and whatever else. So there's no good. And so that gets turned over to the SS under Himmler. And much of the police state really gets turned over to the SS. Eventually, all of the police come under Himmler's control in Germany. For a while early on, the SA were very much auxiliary policemen, including wearing special sort of armbands that said that for a while. But they continue more in a militia type role, and we will be seeing this in Third Reich events, because there's a bunch of events. Now, I don't give you a chance to not take this, because if you were to look at this as a pure min-max kind of situation, you don't want this. This is not a, great, I've got this now, wonderful thing. This is more like, oh, we've got this big white elephant thing. Okay, well, what do we do with it? That's sort of what this is. Now, there are useful elements, and there will be useful elements within this whole thing. So, the SA is very much the internal security element, and also some sort of fighting element. Okay, so what we will lose, 400 manpower, 3,000 supplies. It's part of the reason I've been waiting for some of this to build up a bit more, because I don't want this to go negative, because I want to keep selling things. I don't want to interrupt the sales. And gain some officers. Now, if you're afraid, there will be in a later event that will put a great majority of the manpower back for the Army's use. Now, what this does do gives you a very historical, could even be argued overly historical, SA. Now, what you want to do is you want to, again, we can select here. You click here, which will select, I should say, all of the subunits. So you want to click on there and get all of the subunits of the SA. Every last one of them. And then you want to hit here to stop the ability for them to receive upgrades. You do not, I repeat, do not want to upgrade any of these units, because all of these units will go away and be replaced with other ones later on in the event that gives you back much of the manpower. You'll get another order of battle that will look the same, but these units will be weaker in strength. Instead of, each one of these SA units becomes like 1/4 the strength or something. So they end up being much weaker. So that gives you your manpower back. What this is good for now? Well, it will reduce your revolt risk in Germany, depending on what decisions you want to take. So you can move it to different parts to reduce your revolt risk. Obviously, they haven't been here long enough to affect anything. So it will help with that. Most assuredly. It will eat supplies, again costing you a bit more, and at this stage with the militia units, if you were to somehow go to war too early, possibly over Czechoslovakia or some other thing, you will have a large militia defense force to defend against the invading French or others. Okay, so early on it is a useful defensive, and I want to stress that, defensive element. Other than that, and this talks about Victor Lutz. He's a Adolf Hitler loyalist, a yes man. He is the chief of staff of the SA. The official head of the SA is Hitler. So Hitler keeps control of the SA officially throughout the rest of it. So this talks about him. If you want, I won't go into two more. This is the general structural type elements of what it's made up, the different units. And this is a Sturm Empty-Lung flag. Talks a little bit more about them. Note, this is important note, if you disband the SA units, you will get very little manpower because they're militia. They don't give up, when you disband them, they don't give up as much manpower as you see here. And the later event, returning the manpower back to the army, won't fire. You might also want to turn off the upgrades for the SA, as this will be costly, as like I've shown. So I'm giving you full fair warning here, because I don't want to cripple, or this is not made to make Germany easier to play, even though it does give you these militia units, including cavalry militia units. It's to make it more interesting, more challenging. But they have a use, and if all these units are here, not renamed, you can reorganize them if you want to attach them to different headquarters. But don't delete headquarters, because it checks for some of the headquarters. But if you want to reorganize it, go ahead. But you will want to make sure that they're around to get the reduction. Okay. The Ritter SA, that's, again, these guys. They had a very large cavalry element. We'll see how that's used later on. So that's your SA. So now you have an SA. I don't know if it's too powerful. I don't think so. It's large. It was at this time in 36 much larger than the army. So this is what you, in this also, of course, you go from approximately 36 to 40 needing in consumer goods. If you don't do the stopping of upgrades, just because the earlier playthrough when I was testing, it goes to a little over 40 IC needed just for upgrades. So you don't need that. So this will cost you a bit more. It's the cost. But there are a bunch of events that, so long as you have the SA, you will get a bunch of events that will help develop the army, and we will be seeing this. It is not all bad, but it is also not all good. Okay, and Canada, we would give them, sure, we'll feed Canada. Okay, Third Reich events. This is my mod. This here sets up Third Reich events. If you'll notice, all of the just, I can't really highlight there, but when it says lose industrial capacity with level 1 in Dresden, you don't lose, and it's maybe something to do with some of the coding. How I do it, I don't know. Or is it just a Hearts of Iron thing? I don't know. But when it has the minus, lose infrastructure, minus level 1 in Schul, you will lose minus level 1 in Schul. When it has lose industrial, minus level 2 in Dortmund, you will lose level 2 in Dortmund. But you notice the industrial capacities and heavy industries. A bunch of those are in Detroit, Chicago, New Haven, and other places, not just in Germany. It is part of a balancing effort, and including some of those, like New Haven, Connecticut, are to represent armaments factories that aren't there, that should be there. Now, all of the pillboxes and whatnot you're losing is this BS that wasn't around. There again, I know many of you know this because you've played, but just for those who don't, there will be a whole series of events as part of Third Reich events that will build the West Wall at the historical times, and it will cost you ICs to do so. You are adding and removing some strategic resources. but up at the top, again, some of that's sort of funny. So you're losing some energy, you're losing some of the ICs. In some places you're adding some others, but there will also be other later events that will replace, put back a bunch of the ICs and resources as part of the 4-year project, a 4-year plan, I should say. And I look at that very much as within the base game. And now I'm sticking with my version of the 4-year plan. Black Ice has come in and made a different version of the 4-year plan. I think mine is more historical. Mine is definitely more immersive, a lot more immersive events to it. But you could argue, and neither of us are 100% right of what is the most historical, or most accurate. But the base game, I think, sort of, because the AI, because of other things, sort of gave you at the start a bunch of stuff that was really added by the 4-year plan. So that's sort of that. Okay, political feud within the government. So that, I want to get, you're building up a bunch. Let's actually increase this. Come on, there we go. And back again. Okay, Italy, we would give them money for rare materials, okay. Latvia, okay. Spain, Republic, no. Which will eat in. Okay, so I want to get to a positive, positive, positive. There we go. Again, okay, this, the Volks, Empfänger, whatever, sorry Germans, People's Receiver, basically it's a receiver radio, cheap, to get it into everybody's home so we can put our propaganda into their ears every day. That helps out. Yes, we want the Hanover. Again, this is, and we're gonna hold off on some of these things. What is Japan? We would give them supplies for money, sure. And we will sell supplies for money to Belgium as well. Come on, get to positive. Now we also have the Hessen. Okay. What's this? Okay, we will do this one right now. That should help a little bit. We would give them money in exchange for metal. No. We will need to use a metal situation here, though. No. Romania, we would give them fuel for money, sure. We would give them money for rare materials. How badly? No, thank you. Who can we buy some? Well, we could stop selling some of the steel to. Well, we're not really selling them. Who might we buy steel from? The USA. Let's buy from the USA. For trade agreement. Let's buy some steel. It'll be cheap. And yes, I know I just had some events that... Oh, they declined. Okay, well, too big of an attempt to purchase. Come on, come on. We're okay for the moment. I mean, we're losing, but the main thing I want to do is... Okay, while we're here for a moment, I want to talk about organization, how we sort of... Get me down over here. There's sort of the immersion factor as well as organizational factor. The Oberkommando der Heers is basically the command of the army. The Oberst SA Führung is the head of the SA office. And that is what we have there. And then currently we have the SSVT inspector. We will be getting some more SS office headquarters. Then we have the Luftwaffe headquarters. And then we have the Navy. Now these, especially the Luftwaffe and the Navy, are really mostly there for immersion. Yeah, their forts can help defend these, or their forces can help defend these ports and things. So they do have a practical thing. But we have the OKW, and we have Befehlshaber des Ersatzheers. Basically, this is the reserve army of Nazi Germany, the home army, if you will. Not the home guard like in Britain, but the sort of reserve army is what this is. The headquarters of. Now, I don't know why. Well, maybe this is mostly for the AI to give different theater commands within this thing. But this is somewhat, and it's really sort of a crazy overlapping thing, somewhat under this and somewhat not under this. Now, this is here the Wehrmacht Führungsamt, Wehrmacht headquarters. But really, look at the counter here, OKW, the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, in which this is the office under that. This shouldn't be here yet. This was not formed until 1938, when von Blumberg was removed from office. What if you are going to have an on-field command? It should be the Reich War Ministry, which 35, I think it was, moved from being a defense ministry over to a war ministry, and under him was Fritsch as the sort of head of the army. So he's basically head of the armed forces state up until 38, and this goes back to the old Kaiserreich and before coming out of the Prussian setup. The armed forces under the army, that was the primary senior service, if you will, in Germany, was sort of a separate state. It was sort of outside of the, if you will, the political state of Germany, and it sort of had its own running counterbalance. And so Blumberg is almost an independent figure, not quite. Definitely in the early days he's an independent figure, but as time goes on, more and more the Fuhrer is more and more in charge. But And before any of you start pulling out historical documents or historical references, sometimes paper is just that. It's paper. It's what the practical, real element is. And that's sort of what I'm talking about, is that there was this long tradition within Germany and the German armed forces that were separate from the, shall we say, party political of Germany. And it's sort of a separate state within a state. It has this thing. Now, Hitler was very, very worried about being overthrown. He starts to feel comfortable in 1935 once they reintroduce conscription. Because up until that point, even though he, since 1933, has been illegally expanding the armed forces beyond the 100,000 man, it is still a professional volunteer force made up primarily of officers which are nationalists, not National Socialists. And he's obviously having on his left within the Nazi Party the wanting a second revolution under Rome and the SA. And he really wants the SA there as a, because remember, as I said earlier, the SA is, and even at this time in 1936, is much larger than the army. Now, the SA doesn't have artillery pieces. It doesn't have structure, as it has administrative elements, as which you can sort of see on the map here, but it doesn't have the sort of training and heavy background structure that the army does. And even though there are, especially early on, a lot of veterans from World War I that are in the SA, as time goes on, there's a lot more young men that aren't. They have basic military skills, but are not necessarily trained as being fighters. So if there was a civil war to break out, it's not, you know, it could be a real civil war. It could be a really bloody mess. What Hitler's really worried about is a coup. Is the army, which is on its own, has sort of its own networks, that it just sort of does a coup and takes out the government before the SA can mobilize. He really starts feeling, and it's, as time goes on, once he gets conscription in there, and large numbers of SA men are being conscripted and joining the army, as well as other non-SA but just general Germans that are National Socialists, as well as simply people that aren't dedicated to the traditional militarism of the army. He feels much more comfortable. But he still wants more and more control of this. Up until Blumberg is removed, Blumberg could probably refuse and stop just about any aggressive war that Hitler's going to take on. So he's worried about that, and so he's worried about whether it's an actual coup, as in marching and arresting and shooting people, or simply public statements and calling out the soldiers to, defend Blumberg and Fritsch and others from being arrested, and saying, we're not going to go to war with, pick the nation, Czechoslovakia, France, or whatever it is. This would just be madness. We're not going to do it. So Hitler wants to undermine these, particularly Blumberg. Blumberg is not a Nazi. He is not a huge fan of Hitler, but he likes a lot of what Hitler's doing, particularly in rearming of the German armed forces, as well as suppressing communists and socialists and other radicals. So he's not a Nazi, but he likes a lot of what Hitler's doing. He also likes the idea of increasing Germany's territory back to the old German Empire, and maybe gobbling up a few former Austrian-type possessions, including Austria. So he's not anti-Hitler, but he's not a Nazi. They're sort of, somewhere in between there. But he has that sort of veto power, if you will, over things. And Hitler wants to remove that. So that's sort of a thing that Hitler's dealing with. Okay, well, let's start with the Hanover here, since we're now over. Now, so what we're going to be doing here eventually is reorganizing some of these stuff. Okay, now again, wait just a little bit more. Okay, the Winter Olympics is coming. It used to be the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics were held in the same year. Generally, and it was up until 36, including 36, held in the same country. Now they do it every other year, you know, or every 2 years, you know, a winter and a summer. So lots of Olympics a lot of the time. So we are building and completing the ability to have it. We would give them money for rare materials. No, thank you. No longer. Let's see. Okay, USA. Let's see if we can buy a bunch of steel. We don't need a huge amount. Maybe I want to get on the positive side of that. Oh, okay. So they're not going to be selling us steel. Will the Soviets sell us steel? And this is something I know I've talked about before. I remember this as a kid, seeing this image, and this was sort of, and it gets back to what I was talking about with Bloomberg. This is how, prior to the Nazis coming into power, how they viewed the world. Basically, you have in white in Germany, and then Austria with their 100,000 men. But you look at the French army with its tanks, its big guns, its airplanes. The Polish army, compared to the 100,000 man army, Poland could overrun, just Poland alone could overrun Germany if you don't take into account the SA and other sorts of elements. And even and Czechoslovakia, which inherited most of Austria-Hungary's armaments industry, is really serious about, even before Hitler comes to power, about arming and maintaining strong arms to maintain its security. It's one of the countries. Poland is too, because Poland is basically born out of the Russian Civil War and their ability to stop the Reds, I think, along this river somewhere, and in a major cavalry battle and drive them back. So they're at least at the start of it, very worried about Soviet encroachment, more so at the start than German. So Italy or France is having a little breakout in revolts. Not entirely unhistorical, but a little overplayed to actually have a whole province, but they were having different strikes and revolts and whatnot. So Germany is seeing the world as this way. Its government, its armed forces is seeing the world. That is why, even without being a Nazi, is why it embraces Hitler with its rearmament program. So that just wanted to, and it's not, it is a propaganda image, but it is not necessarily an inaccurate one. Now, all these countries weren't planning on invading Germany, but still, you have that sort of perception. Somebody still have blueprints. Well, how are we doing? Okay. Intelligence-wise. Okay, well, we have 10 spies, and we are building up some extra. Okay, we'll build up a bit more extra spies before we start using them in other countries. And we can now take that. So we got, these are good. They get us some liners, which is very useful, and the motor torpedo boats as well. So we can deal with that soon. And reinforcements to get that up and going. So as you can see, many of our factories are under production. Now at least we are in a positive territory for deal. Well, if it helps out Italy, I would rather help out Italy than not. Okay. And we'll decline all these. Air bases for East Prussia or Ost Prussia. Yes, we can afford that, and we want that. Units of the Third Reich, you will get units from Vanilla Black Ice or OBs. We mod makers like you to know that our mods are installed, and this is telling you about some of that. This I thought was interesting. Part of it was just the cool graphics. Trommler Zigaretten, drummer cigarettes. This was the main, not the only, but the main cigarettes sold by the SA. They actually sort of, I don't know if they, I may even say in here, if they owned the factory, or I think they got, what they did do is they got a percent, the SA units got a percent of the individual SA units got a percent of the sales of the cigarettes that they did. And so that they would sell to their own members. They would literally sell the cigarettes themselves. You know, SA men out there, you know, here, buy these cigarettes or I'll punch you in the face. And they would go around to merchants and say, hey, buy these cigarettes to sell in your store or I'll punch you in the face. Now, they might not quite say I'll punch you in the face, but you get that sort of idea. It was strong-arm tactics. They weren't, to my understanding, I don't smoke, but to my understanding, they weren't particularly good quality cigarettes. They were sort of cheap and nasty, and they sold lots and lots of them to fund the SA. Now, basically, and I don't think, oh yeah, the SA, okay, they actually stopped manufacturing the cigarettes in 1934 after they came to power, because Hitler was a health freak. He was various elements of it, very much of a health freak, and wanted to do this. So they stopped making it, and they no longer needed to make money by threatening merchants to sell the cigarettes as a racket. But I just liked the graphics and wanted to tell the story of it. So we can go back to selling cigarettes, and we'll gain some dissent because of the enforcement element of it, the SA out, strong arm. And we'll lose some medicine, though I don't know if we really have any in production. And I don't know if it would ever lower the level by lowering that. But, or we can, but, oh, the Nazis were big anti-smoking people. See, this is, you know, my experience of Europeans is they smoke a lot. Now, of course, I'm a Californian, which is a non-smoking state. You can't smoke outside in public in places in California or everywhere. I don't know. It's been years. I don't know. I used to work as a bouncer. You could smoke outside, out of doors in like restaurants, and maybe you still can. But I'm talking like on the streets or something. I don't know. It's getting crazy. And in most businesses and most other places, you can't smoke. So we're a non-smoking environment. A lot of people still smoke, but it's, you know, hushed up, and you got to do it in your home and all kinds of stuff. To me, Europeans smoke a lot, but the Nazis were on an anti-smoking kick. So you have the choices. You want supplies and money with a little loss. We're going to go no, but you can choose. Okay, this is another government repression. Just about every country gets this type thing. You can send in the security police, which increases national revolt risk, but you'll get a bunch of free I think they're a bunch of free fascist militia type units. You can do police buildings, or you can appease them. Those all help. You can choose what you want. I'm going with appease them, because I want to keep that revolt risk down. But I'll tell you, if you want to, I would probably, if I wasn't going to do appease them, I don't think I would do security police, because you have all the SA units. You don't need more fascist militia. You just really don't. They're not a good purpose for it. You got enough fascist militia or National Socialist militia. Now the police buildings, they will help where the police buildings are keep revolt risk down. But you notice it hurts research efficiency and IC production, and similarly there. Though it of course helps the ICs. Where here, it helps research efficiency up, but also the reason it's lowering IC efficiency for production than ICs is because it's more time off. It's less, it's less harsh work conditions. So we're going with that. And it's going to jump up our consumer goods. So, big jump. That is all that comes into why I don't want to go to a 3-year draft yet. We may jump all the way to service by requirement once we can and the war starts. Okay, Gustloff is murdered. I know I've gone into a lot of this. If you want to go into a war, which would be sort of stupid with Switzerland, though you can, you've got the SA and you got whatever, you can probably overdo it, but you're going to get massive dissent. You're going to lose national unity, so you better sort of know about this in advance and be down here and ready to go. And if you lose enough SA units or some of the ones, you may not get reduction. So it's a bad idea. You can try to be more friendly with Switzerland if you want. But that's a possibility. Or you can try to use it to blame Switzerland for being bad and gain some national unity, sort of create him as a martyr. So that's what we're going to do. David Frankfurter's trials, that's the guy who killed him. He eventually gets released after the war because, of course, he was the good guy in this story. He was the good guy. Not the bad guy. Oh, and I will, about David Frankfurter. I think he saved Switzerland. From my research, I have become more and more convinced that that man saved Switzerland from being invaded by himself. They should put up a huge statue to him in Switzerland, because Gustloff was a dual citizen between Germany and Switzerland. So he could vote in Switzerland elections, but he was still a German national, so he could run around in his Nazi uniform if he wants to, and he would have pushed Germany to occupy and take Switzerland. That was his goal. He was in charge of the guy in charge of dealing with Nazis and Germans outside of Germany. That was his main target focus. He was in charge of all that. His particular target focus, because of his background, was Switzerland. But he was the guy in overall charge of that. Because he gets killed, and this I want to be very clear, this is my belief of it. Obviously, we don't know what would have happened because he didn't live. But his office, the NSDAP office, dealing with Germans, not German Americans or Austrians or German peoples, the Sudeten Germans. I'm not talking those type of people. I'm talking about people holding German passports living in other countries. That was the office that he was in charge of, is the guy that deals with Germans living in foreign countries. Of course, these people also had contact with Sudeten Germans, Austrian Germans, and Germans living, Germans that are Polish nationals but living in Warsaw. There were a fair number of Germans that had been living in Warsaw for some time, or, you know, so they had contacts everywhere else too. But his particular mission was Austria, and to get the Austrian Germans as part of Germany, and that's what he wanted to do. And he was somebody. He wasn't a nobody. He was somebody. He wasn't a Goering or a Goebbels or, you know, or something, but he was a somebody, and I think he would have pushed enough that would have gotten Germany. It would have been, I don't know if it would have been a Czechoslovakian situation, and where he would have really worked up a lot of the German-speaking Austrians, and then, you know, massed a bunch of tanks on the border, and the Austrians go, well, we've lost. We could either shoot and die a bunch, or we can just let this happen peacefully. That's sort of the way I would take Austria, and, you know, or not, because loss of national unity and the idea of all these people are going to fight, the German-speaking people are going to fight against the German invaders. Whether it would have been that kind of situation, or whether it would have been more of a Poland situation, you know, going in against a fairly united Austria. Even the German, you know, great majority of the German speakers fighting against the invaders. But either way, I think Germany would have won, and I think Germany would have done it. So I think David Frankfurter saved Switzerland from being invaded, because there was nobody that I've been able to find of any significant status that supported German activities to take over Switzerland. Nobody was advocating for it once Gustav is killed. No one picks up that mantle. No one. I see no German Gauleiters or anybody else running around making speeches, commenting, trying to do it. Nobody's pushing for it, so it gets dropped. He was pushing for it. He dies, it gets dropped. He saves Switzerland. There should be a massive statue to him in Switzerland. Okay, we're going to pick heavy aircraft, gasoline engine, welded armor. That's sort of the historical what Germany does, so we like that. BRABAG is an acronym for a bunch of, or an organization that is working with alternative fuels, you know, coal to gasoline. Okay, and we can afford that without going negative. So yes, we want that. So you get some of the crude oil and rare materials back. Rare materials is sort of like for oil, or oil that, or you create rubber from the process. National, you know, synthetic rubber. National Socialist Motor Corps. That's Julian. Again, yeah, I don't know. You can go back and watch other series if you want to. That starts out as the motorized SA, and eventually becomes its own sort of sub-branch, and does so just before Rome is killed, so they sort of escape being labeled as whatnot. So Julian gets it out. Okay, the Winter Olympics have begun. So we improve our relations by a little bit by all the different participants, nations. Good propaganda. Now, I was mentioning Gustav as a person who was promoting a type of action within National Socialist Germany. Another person that was doing a similar thing was Ritter von Epp. He was in charge of the Reich Colonial Bund, the National Colonial Association, or whatever you want to call it in English. And his main purpose, his main push, was to get back the lost territories of the German Empire overseas. So here also is our Lebensraum. He wasn't like, oh, we don't want to be in Russia. No, we want living room in the colonies. He is the main mover and shaker for that. It's not a minor thing, but it's not a very major thing. So, you know, however you want to sort of take that. Sort of waiting to get a bunch of offers here. to probably buy supplies. Here we go. Yes. Yes. Okay. And yes. We'll switch over to Soviet selling later on. Selling and buying to the Soviet Union. Okay. Philip Holzman, Aktiengeschäft. They're one of the major building companies in Germany. It still exists to this day. And they are one of the companies heavily involved in building the Autobahn. So 1938 employees. So we can continue to finish the Autobahn if we wish. It will cost us 5,000 supplies, metal, energy. Note why we're needing to do this. We'll wait a little bit on that, not much. I have not made new ones of these. This I have come to believe, this part, not this patch, not this thing here. These are both Coca-Cola thanks for the Olympics, but that I believe is a fake now. I am firmly convinced that that is a fake advertisement. Coke is it, but Coke did sponsor the Olympics, so this is the Winter Olympics thing, and I'll someday, and just haven't gotten to that, but make a new thing. Okay, well, I want to get more supplies and steel. Okay, 1930 Himalaya expedition. They send up a bunch of Germans, men, one woman. There she is in the group, and there she is there. They go to the Himalayas. 1930, write a book about it. Basically, to some degree, this is foreshadowing of some other stuff that I want to do, which involves Germany and Tibet and other things, but more of it. You can see photos from the book, more of what has already come to pass. Okay, come on. Just another day, one more day. Okay, no, 2 more days. There we go. Restore our blueprints, railway artillery. Yeah, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna take fewer than all of them. I took basically all of them last time. I think enough of these guns will be useful for some fortress busting divisions, but I don't want them all. Yeah, we'll do this. And on that note, we're going to end the episode here. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And of course, just thanks for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. It does help. Hit that like button. You can probably find it. And of course, I really like to hear from you with questions, suggestions, ideas, corrections. Please post below. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.